July 3, 1971. Paris. In a quiet apartment tucked away on Rue Beautreillis, a bathtub holds the lifeless body of one of the most iconic figures in rock history. Jim Morrison, the Lizard King. The voice of the Doors. A poet. A rebel. A myth in the making. He was just 27. But here's the strange part. No autopsy was performed. No public photos of the body were ever released. Only a simple statement from his girlfriend, Pamela Courson. He died of heart failure. In the bath. Just like that. For someone so famous, so followed, so watched. The circumstances surrounding his death were odd. Too clean. Too quiet. And so the rumors began. Some said it was a heroin overdose. Others believed it was a cover-up to protect someone close to him. But then came the most chilling theory of all. What if Jim Morrison never died? What if he staged it all? It wouldn't be the first time a legend wanted to escape the weight of fame. But with Morrison, who hated the machine of the music industry, who spoke in riddles and lived like a shadow, it didn't seem impossible to understand what really happened. We have to go back to the chaos of his final days, the rising pressure, the poetry, and the quiet plan that may have led to the greatest vanishing act in rock and roll. In March 1971, Jim Morrison left Los Angeles. He was tired of court cases, tired of being called obscene, tired of being Jim Morrison, the wild man, the sex symbol, the troublemaker. So he did what many dream of doing. He disappeared. He flew to Paris with Pamela Courson, his longtime girlfriend. They rented a quiet apartment in the Le Marais district. He stopped shaving, grew a beard, walked the streets like a regular man. No entourage, no paparazzi, just Jim writing poems and reading books. He visited bookstores. He sat in cafes. He even talked about publishing his poetry under a fake name. But behind that quiet life, something darker brewed. Morrison was drinking heavily. Some say he experimented with heroin, although he hated needles. Pamela, however, was known to dabble in it. They argued. They partied. They made up. And through it all, Jim kept saying the same thing to friends. I need out. Out of the whole game. He felt trapped by fame, by image, by the legacy people expected him to live up to. And then came July. On the night of July 2, 1971, Morrison stayed home while Pamela reportedly went out. She came back around 3 a.m. By the morning of July 3, Jim was found in the bathtub, unresponsive. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just gone. But the story was already falling apart. According to Pamela, Jim had felt unwell that night. He coughed. He vomited blood. Then he took a bath. But no one else saw him that night. No one else heard him. There was no autopsy. Why? Because French law didn't require one if there were no signs of foul play. And Pamela, hysterical and shocked, insisted Jim had died of natural causes. Just like that, the case was closed. The official report? Heart failure. At 27 years old. No doctor had diagnosed him with heart disease. He didn't have a history of cardiac problems. He was young, relatively fit, even with the alcohol. But the French authorities didn't question it. They sealed the death certificate. And that's when the rumors exploded. Some said Jim overdosed on heroin, that he snorted it by mistake, thinking it was cocaine. Others claimed Pamela found him, panicked, and cleaned up the scene. There were even whispers that Jim died not in the bathtub, but in a nightclub, the Rock and Roll Circus. Allegedly, he collapsed in a bathroom stall. The club's owners, worried about scandal, moved his body to the apartment. Silently, secretly. There's no hard proof of this. But multiple people have come forward saying they were there, or they knew someone who was. Even the club's former manager hinted at it. Still, no investigation, no follow-up, just a quiet burial at Père Lachaise Cemetery. A simple grave unmarked for years. And as the world mourned, the mystery only deepened. To understand Jim's death, we have to talk about Pamela Courson. She was more than Jim's girlfriend. She was his muse, his chaos, his comfort, and some would argue his undoing. They met in 1965. She was just 19, a red-haired beauty with a rebellious soul. Jim was captivated. He called her his cosmic mate. But their relationship was volatile. Fights, breakups, reunions, drugs, passion, tears. Pamela wasn't just a bystander. She was right there with Jim, living his lifestyle matching his excess. Friends said she introduced him to heroin. Others believe she tried to wean him off it. After Jim's death, Pamela returned to the U.S. shattered, fragile. She barely spoke about what happened in Paris. She avoided interviews, refused to answer questions. 2 years later, in 1974, she too was found dead. Overdose. At 27. Just like Jim. Some call it poetic. Others call it suspicious. Was she haunted by guilt? Was she silenced? We'll never know. With her gone, so much of Jim's final hours died with her. But that didn't stop the theories. Jim Morrison's death certificate lists heart failure. No autopsy. No toxicology. No photos of the body were ever released. And in France, that's legal, if no foul play is suspected. But to many, that only fueled the mystery. Fans speculated he faked his death, that he was tired of fame, that he wanted peace, that he slipped away to Africa or the Pacific Northwest, or even was living in New York under a new name. Conspiracy theorists claimed he'd return on the 20th anniversary of his death. He didn't. Others say he never left. That he's buried not in Père Lachaise, but in a secret location. Or cremated. Or lost. Meanwhile, some believe his death was covered up to protect reputations. To avoid scandal. To shield the music industry. Or Pamela. There are whispers of a heroin overdose in the bathroom of the rock and roll circus. That he died in the stall. That his body was carried back to the apartment. That his death was staged as peaceful. But again, no proof. Just stories. Stories that stretch across decades. Jim Morrison's legacy didn't die in Paris. It grew. He became more than a musician. He became a myth. His grave is now a pilgrimage site. Fans leave flowers, poems, bottles of whiskey. And questions. So many questions. Why was there no autopsy? Why the secrecy? What really happened in that bathtub? We may never get a clear answer. Because sometimes, the mystery is the story. And Jim Morrison, the Lizard King, remains exactly what he always was. A beautiful burning question in a world too eager for answers. Paris. August 31st, 1997. Just past midnight, a black Mercedes-Benz speeds through the streets of the City of Light. Inside are 4 people. Princess Diana, her partner Dodi Fayed, bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones, and driver Henri Paul. They're being followed, not by enemies, but by paparazzi. Motorcycles, cameras flashing, a chase through the dark tunnels of Paris. Then, impact. At 12:23 a.m., the car crashes into the 13th pillar of the Ponte El Alma tunnel. In seconds, everything changes. Inside the wreckage, Dodi is dead. Henri Paul is dead. Diana is critically injured, barely breathing. Only Trevor survives, though badly hurt. Paramedics arrive. They work in the darkness of the tunnel. 20 minutes pass. 30. At 2:06 a.m., Diana is pronounced dead at the Pitié-Salpêtrière hospital. She was 36 years old. The world wakes up to grief, shock, and confusion. How could the most famous woman on earth, beloved by millions, die like this? Was it just a tragic accident? The official story said yes. Henri Paul was drunk. He was speeding. They weren't wearing seatbelts. Chased by reckless photographers. Case closed. Or was it? Because the more people looked, the more questions began to surface. Things that didn't add up. First, Henri Paul. Initial tests showed he had alcohol in his blood. 3 times the legal limit. But friends, hotel staff, even security cameras said he didn't seem drunk at all. He walked straight. He spoke clearly. He laughed just hours before the crash. Some claimed the blood samples didn't even match his blood type. Was there a mix-up? Or something worse? Next, the missing footage. The Ponte El Alma tunnel had security cameras, but none of them captured the crash. According to French authorities, the cameras were either not working or not facing the right direction. Convenient? Or deliberate? And then there was Diana herself. Weeks before her death, she wrote a chilling note. In it, she said, "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury." She wrote that in 1995, 2 years before the crash. She believed someone wanted her gone. The public reacts. News broke across every continent. Crowds gathered at Buckingham Palace. Candles, flowers, tears, but also outrage. Why wasn't she protected? Why didn't she have proper royal security? Why did the royal family take so long to respond? And deeper still, why did so many feel like this wasn't just an accident? After Diana's death, the media frenzy exploded. But quietly beneath the headlines, people started asking darker questions. Because this wasn't just any woman. This was Princess Diana, the people's princess. And she had made powerful enemies. A royal problem. By 1997, Diana was no longer married to Prince Charles. But she was still very much in the public eye. She was dating Dodi Fayed, the son of billionaire Mohammed Al Fayed, a Muslim, a foreigner, and rumor had it Diana was pregnant. To some within the British establishment, this was scandalous. A future king's mother with a child from a Muslim man? Unthinkable. To those obsessed with royal purity, Mohammed Al Fayed later claimed Diana and Dodi were planning to marry, that this union threatened the monarchy, and that's why they were killed. A staged accident, made to look like a drunk driving tragedy. It sounds outrageous, but then so do the facts. The missing seatbelts. Neither Diana nor Dodi were wearing seatbelts, but Diana always wore hers. Friends confirmed it. Bodyguards confirmed it. So why not that night? Could the belts have been tampered with? British investigators later said the seatbelts weren't working. But why weren't they fixed? Why were they ignored? Too many questions. Too few answers. Diana's fear of the establishment. In interviews, Diana often hinted at feeling unsafe. She spoke about being isolated, watched, undermined. She believed the royal family wanted to silence her. And when she began speaking about landmines, about politics, about being a mother on her own terms, she became more than a princess. She became a voice of change. And change threatens power. The Red Diary. One of the most persistent rumors involves a diary. According to insiders, Diana kept a red leather journal. In it, she detailed secrets, affairs, threats, names. After her death, the diary vanished. Never found. Never acknowledged. Where did it go? Who took it? And what was in it? That scared people so much? The role of intelligence agencies. Some believe the British intelligence agency, MI6, was involved. Former spies have claimed they monitored Diana. They followed her. They had files on her movements. One retired agent even suggested the crash bore similarities to a technique used to induce accidents. Was this just talk? Or a glimpse into something much deeper? In the years that followed Diana's death, 2 major investigations were launched. One in France, one in the United Kingdom. Both concluded the same thing. It was a tragic accident, caused by a drunk driver, reckless paparazzi, and the failure to wear seatbelts. But not everyone was convinced. Operation Paget. In 2004, the British police opened Operation Paget, a 3-year, multi-million-pound inquiry into the conspiracy theories. They interviewed 300 witnesses. They reviewed 6,000 pages of evidence. The result? They concluded there was no conspiracy, no foul play, and that Diana was not pregnant. But Mohammed Al-Fayed refused to accept the findings. He believed the investigation was a cover-up, that the establishment was protecting itself. And many people agreed, because for all the evidence, there were still holes, still inconsistencies, still silence from those who mattered most. The royal family's reaction. In the immediate days after Diana's death, the royal family stayed quiet. Too quiet. They remained at Balmoral. They didn't speak publicly. They didn't lower the flag at Buckingham Palace. The people noticed. It felt cold, detached, like they were hiding something. Eventually, the Queen addressed the nation. But for many, the damage was done. The silence only fed the fire. What Diana left behind. Diana was more than a princess. She was a mother, a humanitarian, a woman who had walked through pain, and chose to heal others. Her death left a wound in the world, a wound that never fully healed. And the questions around her final night continue to echo. So what do we really know? Was it just a tragic accident? Or was it something darker? A warning? A message? A clean erasure of someone who spoke too much and loved too freely? We may never know. But what we do know is this. Diana's light didn't die in that tunnel. It lives on. In the lives she touched, the people she helped to, and the truth that refuses to stay buried. You've heard the facts. You've seen the cracks in the official story. Now we ask you, was Diana's death an accident? Or was it something more? Tell us what you believe in the comments below. Because some truths deserve to be questioned. And some questions should never be silenced. She was called the People's Princess, a woman who redefined royalty, loved by millions, feared by some, and then she was gone. On the night of August 31st, 1997, in the Pont El Alma tunnel in Paris, Princess Diana died in a car crash. The official story spread fast. Speeding driver, paparazzi chase, no seatbelt, a tragic accident. But for many, something didn't add up. Why did the ambulance take over 90 minutes to get her to a hospital just a few miles away? Why were none of the surveillance cameras in the tunnel working that night? And why did Diana write a letter just months before her death saying, "My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure and serious head injury"? Was this just paranoia? Or was it a warning? Let's go back to the final day of Diana's life, August 30th, 1997. Paris. Diana arrived in Paris with Dodi Al-Fayed, her companion and rumored fiancé. They were staying at the Ritz Hotel, owned by Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, a billionaire businessman. The paparazzi had followed them for days, snapping photos at every move. They couldn't leave the hotel without being swarmed. That evening, the couple decided to escape. They'd dine at a private apartment owned by the Al-Fayed family, then return to Dodi's home away from the cameras. But they never made it. The escape plan. To throw off the press, they used a decoy vehicle at the front of the hotel. Meanwhile, Diana and Dodi slipped out the back, entering a black Mercedes-Benz S280, driven by Henri Paul, the hotel's deputy head of security. Also in the car, Trevor Rees-Jones, Dodi's bodyguard. He was the only one wearing a seatbelt, and he would become the sole survivor. The car sped off into the Paris night, followed closely by a swarm of paparazzi on motorcycles. At 12:23 a.m., the car entered the Pont El Alma tunnel. Seconds later, it crashed. The impact was brutal. The car slammed into the 13th pillar of the tunnel at high speed. The front was crushed. The scene catastrophic. Dodi and Henri Paul were killed instantly. Diana was still alive but critically injured. She would die hours later in the hospital. News of Diana's accident spread like wildfire. And when her death was confirmed, the world broke down. People flooded the streets. Flowers were stacked outside Buckingham Palace. Grown men wept on television. It felt like a queen had died, but one who was never officially crowned. Yet even as millions grieved, a different conversation began. What really happened in that tunnel? Let's start with the ambulance. The crash occurred at 12:23 a.m. Emergency responders arrived around 12:30 a.m. But Diana didn't reach the hospital until 2:06 a.m. That's more than an hour and a half for a drive that should have taken less than 10 minutes. French authorities said her injuries were so delicate. They needed to stabilize her at the scene. But some experts disagreed. They argued that in trauma cases like this, load and go is the standard. Get the patient to the hospital fast. Why the delay? And then there's the issue of the missing CCTV footage. The Pont de El Alma tunnel had multiple traffic cameras, but officials claimed that none of them recorded the crash. Why? Were the cameras really off? Or was something withheld? The letter that changed everything. In October 2003, the Daily Mirror published a handwritten letter. It was from Diana, dated October 1996, less than a year before her death. In it, she wrote, "This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous. My husband is planning an accident in my car, brake failure, and serious head injury." That letter was given to her former butler, Paul Burrell, who kept it for years. When asked why she wrote it, friends say Diana had become increasingly suspicious of the people around her. She had divorced Prince Charles. She was outspoken, independent, dating a Muslim man, and she had talked openly about landmines, poverty, HIV, and the failures of the royal family. Some believe she had become a threat. The conspiracies begin. Over the years, multiple theories have emerged. 1. The royal plot, that Diana's death was orchestrated by the royal family or intelligence services to protect the monarchy, to avoid scandal, to silence her. 2. The pregnancy theory, that Diana was pregnant with Dodi Al-Fayed's child, and that a Muslim child in the line of royal succession was unacceptable. 3. MI6 involvement. Former intelligence officers have claimed that the method used in Diana's crash closely resembles techniques used in targeted assassinations. A bright light, high speed, tunnel, no escape. Are these theories far-fetched? Maybe, but they refuse to disappear. Even Mohammed Al-Fayed, Dodi's father, spent years demanding a full inquiry. He believed his son and Diana were murdered. He never accepted the official explanation. In 2004, the British government launched an official investigation. It was called Operation Paget, led by the Metropolitan Police. The goal? To explore all conspiracy theories surrounding Diana's death. The investigation took 3 years. It reviewed thousands of pages of evidence, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, and cost over £10 million. In the end, the conclusion was clear. No foul play, just a tragic accident. The driver, Henri Paul, was found to be intoxicated, driving at over 100 kilometers per hour. Neither Diana nor Dodi wore seatbelts, and the paparazzi played a devastating role. But even with that conclusion, many weren't satisfied, because too much still didn't make sense. Why was Henri Paul, an experienced security officer, driving at such a reckless speed? Why did he have high levels of carbon monoxide in his blood? Why didn't the royal family react faster? Why did they remain so quiet? And why did Diana seem to know something was coming? A woman who knew too much? In her final interviews, Diana spoke of being isolated, cut off, targeted. She said, "There are people in this establishment who don't like me. They see me as a threat." She had left the royal family, but she hadn't gone quietly. She had the world's attention, and she was using it to speak about injustice, to criticize tradition, to shape her own legacy. And maybe that was too much for some to tolerate. A legacy that refuses to die. Today, more than 2 decades later, Diana remains one of the most beloved figures in modern history. Her face still appears on murals, magazines, and memorials. Her story has inspired films, documentaries, and books. Her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, continue to speak of her with reverence and pain. But her death is still an open wound. To this day, millions believe we don't know the full truth. That's somewhere between the headlines and the reports. The real story was buried. And perhaps that was the point. The final question? So what really happened that night in Paris? Was it just a tragic car crash? A deadly mix of speed, chaos, and poor decisions? Or was it something more? A carefully orchestrated plan? A silencing? A cover-up? The truth may never fully come to light. But the questions remain. And they matter. Because the life of Princess Diana wasn't just about royalty. It was about humanity, compassion, and the courage to speak up, no matter the cost. And maybe that's exactly why she died. Thank you for watching. If this story made you think, if you believe the truth deserves to be heard, subscribe for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries and hidden history. We release new videos every week. And now, we want to hear from you. What do you believe? Was Princess Diana's death just a tragic accident? Or was it something darker? Let us know in the comments below. And until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and never stop asking questions. December 26, 1996. Boulder, Colorado. The day after Christmas, snow gently covered the quiet suburban streets. But inside one house, horror had struck. Just before 6 a.m., John and Patsy Ramsey made a panicked 911 call. Their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet, was missing. A ransom note had been left behind. And within hours, the home became the center of one of the most haunting murder cases in American history. This is the story of JonBenet Ramsey, the pageant princess whose tragic death exposed a maze of secrets, lies, and chilling possibilities. JonBenet Patricia Ramsey was born on August 6, 1990. Blonde, bright-eyed, and full of life. By the time she was 6, she had already won numerous beauty pageants. Little Miss Colorado, National Tiny Miss Beauty, and more. To many, she was the image of a living doll. A child dressed in glitter, makeup, and adult-like poses. Critics called it exploitation. Her family called it pride. She lived with her parents, John and Patsy, and her older brother, Burke. A wealthy church-going family, well known in their community. Their house? A 7,000-square-foot mansion in Boulder. On the outside, perfect. Inside? That Christmas would reveal something far more sinister. The first bizarre detail? The ransom note. Patsy said she found it on the staircase. As she headed downstairs early that morning, it was handwritten, 3 pages long. Unusual, rambling, and oddly specific. It demanded $118,000 for JonBenet's safe return, the exact amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus that year. The note called the kidnappers a small foreign faction. It warned, do not contact the police. It signed off, Victory, SBC. To this day, no one knows what that means. But there was something even stranger. Police later concluded that the note was likely written inside the house, using pen and paper from the Ramseys' own kitchen. Who would take the time to write a long ransom note inside the home after kidnapping a child? Unless the child was never taken at all. For hours, police treated it as a kidnapping. The house wasn't sealed off. Friends and neighbors came and went. Evidence was trampled. Critical mistakes were made. Then around 1 p.m., Detective Linda Arndt asked John Ramsey to search the house. He went straight to the basement. And there, he found his daughter's body. JonBenet was lying on the cold concrete floor. Her hands were bound above her head, mouth duct-taped, a nylon cord around her neck, a garrote made from one of her mother's paintbrushes. She had been strangled. But the autopsy would reveal something worse. She had also suffered a blow to the head, severe enough to cause unconsciousness or death. The official cause? Asphyxiation by strangulation with a massive head trauma. She had not been kidnapped. She had been murdered inside her own home. Investigators quickly realized there were no signs of forced entry. The doors were locked. The windows were undisturbed except for one in the basement. But even that appeared too small for anyone to enter through. The family said they had slept through the night. No barking dogs. No alarms. No witnesses. And yet a child had been killed. With her body hidden in a part of the house. No one had checked for hours. It didn't add up. So police began to consider an uncomfortable theory. What if someone inside the house had committed the crime? 3 people were in the house that night. John, Patsy, and Burke Ramsey, JonBenét's 9-year-old brother. Theories started swirling. Some believed John had harmed JonBenét, either in a rage or to cover something up. Others pointed to Patsy, especially given the ransom note was written on her notepad and matched her handwriting according to some experts. Then came the theory about Burke. Could a child kill his own sister? One version suggests JonBenét may have taken Burke's pineapple late at night, leading to a sudden burst of anger, a blow to the head, then panic from the parents, who staged the scene to protect their son. But there was no confession, no fingerprints on the murder weapon, no conclusive DNA, only shadows and silence. In 2008, there was a stunning announcement. A new DNA test on JonBenét's clothing revealed unknown male DNA. It didn't match John, or Patsy, or Burke, or anyone in the FBI database. The Boulder District Attorney issued a letter, formally clearing the Ramseys of all suspicion. But many experts were skeptical. Some said the DNA could have come from the clothing manufacturer. A factory worker, perhaps. Contamination wasn't ruled out. Others argued, if the DNA wasn't from the killer, then who did it? The mystery only deepened. As the case dragged on, the media went wild. Tabloids printed wild accusations. TV specials speculated endlessly. Patsy and John were portrayed as cold, calculating, even evil. But they never confessed. Patsy passed away in 2006 from cancer. John remarried and rarely speaks publicly. And Burke, silent for 2 decades, gave a strange, smiling interview in 2016. That left viewers even more confused. Was he nervous? Or hiding something? The internet exploded with renewed interest. But no new answers. JonBenét's case is not just about a murder. It's about failure on every level. Police mishandled the scene. Investigators clashed. The public rushed to judgment. And a child's story was lost in noise and suspicion. But beneath it all was a little girl who never had a chance to grow up. Her story reminds us that justice is not guaranteed, that truth can be buried beneath money, media, and mistakes. Nearly 30 years have passed. The Ramsey house has new owners. The ransom note? Long gone. The case? Still officially open. No arrests. No resolution. No peace. But people still ask, who killed JonBenét? Was it someone in the house? Someone the family knew? Or a stranger who slipped through the cracks? One day we may find out. Until then, her name remains a haunting reminder of a question that never found its answer. Thank you for watching. If you want more deep dives into the world's most mysterious crimes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. And remember, some cases go cold, but they're never forgotten. He was more than a rapper. He was a poet, a revolutionary voice, a cultural lightning rod. And then he was gone. September 7, 1996. Las Vegas. Tupac Shakur was in town to watch a Mike Tyson fight. He arrived with Suge Knight, CEO of Death Row Records. The two were business partners and targets. After the fight, around 8:30 p.m., Tupac and Suge got into a scuffle in the lobby of the MGM Grand Hotel. Security footage captured the scene. Tupac was seen punching Orlando Anderson, a member of a rival gang. It looked like just another brawl. But it wasn't. It was a spark. And 6 hours later, Tupac would be shot. The final ride. At around 11 p.m., Tupac and Suge were driving through Las Vegas. Tupac was in the front passenger seat. No body armor. No security detail behind them. Just a BMW 750IL rolling down Flamingo Road. Music. Laughter. A night that felt like a celebration. They stopped at a red light. Tupac leaned out the window, chatting with a car full of fans. Smiling, unaware of what was about to happen. Then, at 11:15 p.m., a white Cadillac pulled up beside them. 4 shots rang out, followed by more. A total of 13 rounds fired. Tupac was hit 4 times. Twice in the chest, once in the arm, and once in the thigh. Suge was grazed but survived. The gunman? Gone. Vanished into the night. The hospital and the silence. Tupac was rushed to University Medical Center of Southern Nevada. He underwent surgery. Lungs removed. Sedated. Hooked to machines. For 6 days, the world held its breath. Outside the hospital, fans lit candles. Singers held vigils. The media speculated, twisted, and theorized. On September 13th at 4:03 p.m., Tupac Shakur was pronounced dead. He was just 25 years old. The world mourned. But within hours, something strange happened. The police went quiet. The case stalled. And the question began. Why wasn't this solved? In the days after Tupac's death, the world asked the obvious question. Who killed him? The answer never came. And the silence that followed was louder than any gunshot. Let's look at the theories. Theory 1, the gang retaliation. Some said it was simple. Orlando Anderson, the man Tupac had fought hours before the shooting, was a member of the Southside Crips. Tupac was tied to the Bloods, through Suge Knight and death row. Gang retaliation made sense. Quick. Brutal. Street justice. But here's the problem. Orlando Anderson was brought in for questioning, then let go. He was never charged. 2 years later, he was killed in another shooting. No confession. No closure. Theory 2. Suge Knight was the target. Others believed Tupac wasn't the intended victim. Suge Knight was controversial, aggressive, and had made a lot of enemies. Some insiders whispered the shooting was a hit on Suge, and Tupac just happened to be in the passenger seat. But Suge survived. Barely a scratch. And that raised eyebrows. How does someone survive a direct ambush with bullets flying, while the person sitting inches away takes 4 shots? Unless they weren't the real target. Or unless someone knew where to aim, and where not to. Theory 3, death row records and betrayal. Then came a darker theory. Tupac was about to leave Death Row Records. He had finished the 3-album deal required by his contract, and he was starting his own label, Machiavelli Records. He wanted out of the violence, out of the control, out from under Suge Knight. But Tupac was more than an artist. He was an empire. His image, his words, his future. That meant millions, possibly billions on the line. Was it possible someone didn't want to let go? Was it possible they stopped him before he could walk away? Theory 4. The government did it. And finally, the most radical idea. That Tupac Shakur was targeted by the government. He was outspoken, influential, politically aware. His mother was a Black Panther. He wrote about systemic racism, police brutality, and revolution. He reached millions. And some say, that scared the wrong people. Could it be that Tupac was seen as a threat? A threat that needed to be removed? FBI files show that Tupac was under surveillance for years. His lyrics were dissected. His concerts monitored. So when he died, some asked, was it a warning to others? Or simply the end of a man who refused to be controlled? No arrests. No justice. No matter the theory, the fact remains. No one has ever been arrested for Tupac's murder. Not one person. Not one trial. Not even a serious suspect. Las Vegas police claimed a lack of cooperation. No witnesses. No evidence. But many close to Tupac say the real issue wasn't evidence. It was will. Some say the investigation was never taken seriously. Others believe it was intentionally sabotaged. And maybe that's why the questions have never stopped. For a murder that happened in a major U.S. city, in a car full of witnesses, on a crowded street, in front of tourists, traffic lights, and fans, it's almost impossible to believe no one saw anything. But that's what the official report says. No one talked. No one testified. No one was held accountable. Why? Some believe it was fear. Others say it was loyalty to the street code. No snitching. But a few believe it was something deeper. A warning to keep quiet or disappear. And so, Tupac's murder became not just a crime, but a legend. And with that legend came another rumor. One that refuses to die. Is Tupac still alive? Yes, that theory exists. And it's louder than ever. People claim to have seen him. In Cuba. In Belize. In Serbia. Photos surface. Blurry. Mysterious. Some claim Tupac planned his own disappearance. That he knew the industry was coming for him. And that he faked his death to escape it all. Even the name of his last album, The Don Killuminati, The 7-Day Theory, was released just months after his death. Under the alias Machiavelli, Niccolò Machiavelli, a 16th century philosopher who once wrote that faking your own death was a smart tactic in war. Coincidence? Or code? The album cover showed Tupac on a cross. A martyr. Bleeding. Looking at us with eyes wide open. He was sending a message. Or was he saying goodbye? The legacy of Tupac. Whether he died that night in Vegas or vanished into the shadows. One truth remains. Tupac Shakur never truly left. His music still charts. His quotes still circulate. His image still inspires. He spoke for the unheard. He challenged power. He exposed injustice. And for that, many believe he was punished. But maybe he also became something more. Not just an artist, but a symbol of rebellion, of truth, of the cost of speaking out. The final question. So now we ask, who killed Tupac? Was it a rival gang? A record label hit? A government operation? Or was it all just chaos? Maybe we'll never know. Maybe we were never meant to. But what we can do, is keep asking, keep listening, keep remembering. Because as long as we remember Tupac, as long as his voice echoes through speakers and generations, they can never truly silence him. Thank you for watching. If this story made you think, subscribe for more unsolved mysteries and hidden truths. We post new deep dive documentaries every week. And now, we want to hear from you. What do you believe happened to Tupac? Was it just street violence? Or was it something far more orchestrated? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, stay aware, stay awake, and never stop asking questions. Heath Ledger was only 28 years old, a rising star, a father, a man on the edge of something truly great. And then he was gone. January 22, 2008, New York City. It was a cold Tuesday afternoon. Heath had spent the morning resting in his Soho apartment. At around 3 p.m., his housekeeper entered his bedroom. She thought he was just sleeping, but something was wrong. Heath wasn't responding. She called his masseuse. Together they tried to wake him. They couldn't. The masseuse called 911. Tried CPR. Still no response. By the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. Heath Ledger was dead, lying face down on his bed, surrounded by 6 prescription pill bottles. The headlines followed fast. Joker actor found dead in apartment. Suspected overdose. Tragedy in Hollywood. But even in those early hours, the story didn't sit right with everyone. The rising star, Heath Ledger, was more than a pretty face. More than a teen heartthrob. He was ambitious, thoughtful, uncomfortable with fame but addicted to the art. From 10 Things I Hate About You to A Knight's Tale, He climbed quickly, but always searched for something deeper. In Brokeback Mountain, he stunned critics and audiences alike. And then came The Dark Knight. His role as the Joker was transformative, terrifying, unforgettable. Heath didn't just play the part. He became it. He locked himself in hotel rooms, kept a journal, pushed himself to the edge. And when filming ended, many wondered if he had ever truly let go. The official cause. The New York Medical Examiner ruled it an accidental overdose. The toxicology report listed oxycodone, hydrocodone, diazepam, temazepam, alprazolam, and doxylamine, a deadly mix of painkillers, sleeping pills, and anti-anxiety meds. But no single dose was high enough to kill him. It was the combination that stopped his heart. His death, they said, was entirely accidental. No note, no foul play, no signs of suicide, just a tragic mix-up. But not everyone believed that, and some still don't. Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker is considered one of the greatest in cinematic history. But behind the accolades was a man unraveling. To prepare for the role, Heath isolated himself in a hotel room for over a month. He kept a journal, writing pages of disturbing thoughts, twisted jokes, and dark images. He studied voices, practiced laughter. He immersed himself in madness. That journal, later revealed by his father, ended with a chilling phrase, "Bye-bye." Some saw it as a theatrical flourish. Others saw it as a goodbye. Heath spoke openly about the toll the role had taken. In one interview he said, "Last week I probably slept an average of 2 hours a night. I couldn't stop thinking. My body was exhausted and my mind was still going." He battled insomnia. He used sleeping pills. Sometimes they worked. Sometimes they didn't. Friends said he was edgy, restless, on edge. And yet, he wasn't spiraling. He was focused. He was excited. He was working. In fact, he had just finished filming the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. He was in talks for new projects. He had just seen early footage of The Dark Knight and he was proud of it. So if Heath wasn't depressed, wasn't suicidal, what happened? The medications. The toxicology report showed 6 medications in his system. All legal. All prescribed. But here's where things get strange. Heath didn't have one doctor. He had multiple. Different prescriptions from different countries. Some from the US. Some from Australia. No one seemed to know what the others had given him. And there was no single doctor coordinating his care. That raises a question. Was this a tragic accident? Or medical negligence? Why was no one held accountable? Why was no one even seriously questioned? The missing context. Some friends said Heath had been clean for months. Others said he'd been using medications to cope with stress and sleep deprivation. He had recently split from Michelle Williams, the mother of his daughter Matilda. He missed his child. He felt isolated. But he wasn't falling apart. He had plans. He had hope. He had momentum. And then suddenly he was found dead. No note. No final words. Just a cold apartment. A quiet room. And questions that still echo. The Joker role has always been different, dark, disturbing, demanding. But after Heath Ledger's death, people started asking, is the role cursed? Jack Nicholson, who played the Joker in 1989, reportedly warned Heath, "Be careful with this role." After Heath's passing, Nicholson was approached by paparazzi. He looked directly at them and said, "I told him," whether it was superstition or hindsight. The warning hit differently. The Hollywood machine. Some believe Ledger was a victim of more than just pills. They say he was chewed up by a system that glorifies pain and punishes vulnerability. Heath had always expressed discomfort with fame. The attention. The pressure. He valued privacy. He craved authenticity. But in Hollywood, privacy is a myth, and authenticity doesn't sell tickets. After his death, Heath became a legend. A symbol. A marketing tool. The Dark Knight campaign leaned heavily on his performance. His face became posters. His voice echoed in trailers. The same system that drained him now sold him. Alternative theories. Online forums exploded with theories. Some say it was more than accidental. That someone wanted him quiet. He was rumored to be working on a documentary about drug use in Hollywood. Some say he had uncovered things he wasn't supposed to. Others believe it was simply medical neglect. That no one looked at the full picture. That no one cared enough to connect the dots. There was no autopsy conspiracy. No missing footage. But there was silence. And in that silence, people filled the void with suspicion. The legacy. What remains today is a legacy wrapped in brilliance and tragedy. Heath Ledger posthumously won an Oscar for his portrayal of the Joker. It was one of the most powerful performances ever captured on screen. But many believe he paid the ultimate price for it. His daughter, Matilda, was just 2 years old when he passed. She never got to know the man behind the myth. The artist behind the makeup. Heath once said in an interview, "I feel like I'm wasting time if I repeat myself. I want to keep pushing things." He did. He pushed the limits of performance. He pushed the depth of emotion. And he pushed himself. Perhaps too far. So what really happened? Was Heath Ledger's death a tragic accident? A perfect storm of prescription pills and exhaustion? Or was it something deeper? Was it the weight of the Joker? The loneliness of fame? The cracks in the system that failed to protect him? The world may never know. But one thing is certain. Heath Ledger didn't just leave behind a role. He left behind a warning. A message, hidden between the laughter and the silence. And that message is still echoing today. If this story moved you, share it. Let the world remember Heath not just as the Joker, but as the man who gave everything for his art. And ask yourself, how many more brilliant voices will be lost before the world learns to listen? April 25, 2009. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. A bright coastal town, known for beaches, boardwalks, and spring break crowds. But on this night, something far darker unfolds. 17-year-old Brittany Drexel walks out of the Blue Water Resort. She's wearing a hoodie, flip-flops, and a small purse. She says she's just heading down the street. But she never comes back. No screaming. No witness. No goodbyes. It's as if she vanished into thin air. That night, Brittany's mom, Dawn Drexel, receives a phone call. Her daughter isn't answering her phone. No one has seen her for hours. Panic sets in. But what she doesn't know yet is that this is the start of a mystery that will grip the nation for more than a decade. And by the time the truth finally comes out, it will expose secrets no one expected. Brittany Drexel wasn't supposed to be in Myrtle Beach. She was from Chile, New York, a small town outside of Rochester. Her mom had said no to the spring break trip. Too far. Too risky. Too many strangers. But Brittany had begged. Her friends were going. Everyone was going. She promised she'd be careful. When her mom still said no, Brittany came up with a different plan. She told her parents she was going to stay at a friend's house nearby. But instead, she packed her bags and headed south. What she didn't know was that this one decision, this small rebellion, would change her life forever. Once in Myrtle Beach, Brittany checked into the Bar Harbor Hotel with her friends. For a few days, everything seemed normal. She texted her boyfriend, talked with her mom, posted photos. She even went to the beach, got her hair done, smiled for selfies. But something shifted on April 25th. Around 8 p.m., Brittany left her hotel to visit another group of friends staying at a different resort. At 8:45 p.m., she sent her boyfriend a text. It would be the last message she ever sent. At 9:15, surveillance cameras caught her leaving the Blue Water Resort alone. She wasn't seen again. When Brittany didn't come back that night, her friends grew concerned. They called. They texted. No answer. By morning, her phone had stopped pinging. Her last signal came from a cell tower about 60 miles away, near a remote area in Georgetown County. That detail, just one line on a police report, would become crucial, because it meant she hadn't just wandered off. Someone or something had taken her far from the crowds and lights. And that meant foul play. Police immediately launched an investigation. Brittany's family drove overnight from New York to South Carolina. Her mother, Dawn, began searching the streets, begging for help. Flyers were printed. TV interviews aired. Her face was everywhere. But days turned into weeks. And weeks into months. With no answers. There were no signs of a struggle. No belongings left behind. No credible witnesses. Just silence. The only real clue? That final ping, 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach, in a wooded swampy area known as McClellanville. But when search crews combed through the region, they found nothing. It was as if Brittany had been swallowed by the earth itself. Over time, theories began to swirl. Some thought she was trafficked. Spring break crowds are chaotic, filled with strangers and opportunity. Could someone have lured her with promises of fun or safety and then disappeared her? Others believed she was murdered the same night. Perhaps by someone she trusted. Someone who knew how to vanish without a trace. There were even rumors she had run away. But her family never believed that. Brittany was close to her younger siblings. She had dreams of becoming a cosmetologist. She had just scheduled a modeling photo shoot back home. She wouldn't just disappear. By 2016, 7 years after she vanished, FBI agents went public with a disturbing theory. They said Brittany had been abducted, held against her will, and murdered. The news shook her family. But it still wasn't closure. There was no body, no arrests, no charges. It was just pain. And more waiting. But what no one knew was that a breakthrough was coming. And it would come from a man already behind bars. In 2016, a name emerged. Raymond Moody, a convicted sex offender, a man with a violent history, someone who had already served 21 years in prison for kidnapping and raping a young girl. Moody had been living in the Myrtle Beach area in 2009, just miles from where Brittany was last seen. Investigators looked into him years earlier, but without a body, without evidence, there was nothing to hold him on. But new interviews, jailhouse tips, and cell phone data slowly started pointing back to him. Then, in May 2022, 13 years after Brittany vanished, Raymond Moody made a confession. He told investigators that he had abducted Brittany. He said she got into his car willingly, looking for a ride back to her hotel. But instead of driving her there, he took her to a remote wooded area near Georgetown. And there he strangled her. He buried her in the forest, covered the site, and moved on with his life. Authorities recovered her remains shortly after the confession. Dental records confirmed the heartbreaking truth. Brittany Drexel had been found, but not alive. Raymond Moody was arrested and charged with kidnapping, rape, and murder. He later pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. For Brittany's family, it was a mix of pain and peace. The nightmare was over, but the scars would never fade. But even now, after the truth is known, so many questions still linger. Why did it take over a decade to find her? Could she have been saved? How many other monsters like Moody are still out there? The case of Brittany Drexel isn't just a tragedy. It's a mirror, reflecting the gaps in our systems, the holes in how we protect our youth, and how predators can slip through the cracks. Raymond Moody had a long criminal record. He had already proven what he was capable of. Yet he was free. Free to roam. Free to kill again. And what about the initial investigations? Why were certain suspects pursued so aggressively, while others, like Moody, were brushed aside? For years, rumors swirled. Conspiracy theories spread. And through it all, Brittany's name was kept alive. By the strength of her mother, Dawn. Dawn Drexel refused to let her daughter be forgotten. She appeared on every news channel, filed petitions, stood in front of crowds with tears in her eyes, begging for justice, for answers, for closure. And she got it. but only after 13 long years of waiting. This story speaks to something deeper, something that chills every parent to the bone. Because Brittany didn't go hiking in the woods alone. She didn't break into a stranger's car. She was just a teenager on spring break, trying to be part of something fun. And in the blink of an eye, she vanished. Gone. Without a scream. Without a trace. Without a goodbye. It could happen to anyone. Anywhere. That's why her story matters. That's why we tell it. That's why we remember. In May of 2022, the truth finally surfaced. Moody was arrested. And in a cold, emotionless confession, he admitted it all. He took investigators to the shallow grave where Brittany had been hidden for over a decade. A place in Georgetown County. Not far from where he'd lived all along. He told them how he lured her, what he did, and how he tried to erase her from the world. But he failed. Because Brittany wasn't forgotten. And she never will be. Raymond Moody now faces life in prison. And though justice came late, it came, but the pain remains. The questions linger. Why did it take so long? How many more are out there like Moody walking free? And most of all, how do we protect the next Brittany? If this story moved you, share it. Because every time we say her name, we remind the world that Brittany Drexel mattered. Her life mattered. Her story matters. And her memory lives on not just in headlines, but in hearts. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. And never forget the name. Brittany Drexel. June 25, 2009. A quiet mansion in Los Angeles. Behind its locked gates, the king of pop lies motionless in bed. Paramedics rush in, but it's too late. Michael Jackson, the most famous man on earth, is gone. But what really happened that night? Was it a tragic accident? Or something far more sinister? Tonight, we dive deep into the mystery behind the death that shook the world. Michael Jackson wasn't just a performer. He was the face of an era. From the moonwalk to sold-out stadiums, he stood above the rest. But on the morning of June 25, 2009, the world awoke to silence. Michael Jackson had died. 50 years old. Gone. Just like that. The official story? A sudden cardiac arrest brought on by prescription drugs. But that explanation didn't sit right with everyone. There were too many questions. Too many contradictions. And too much money at stake. To understand what really happened, we have to go back to the night before everything unraveled. June 24th. The Staples Center in Los Angeles was buzzing. Michael was there rehearsing, moving, singing, getting ready for his comeback tour. This is it. 50 shows in London. A return to glory. A redemption arc. He looked good. Tired, maybe, but determined. He danced. He smiled. He hugged his team and told them, "We're gonna change the world." But when he returned home that night, something shifted. He couldn't sleep. He hadn't been able to for a long time. Years even. And on that night, like so many before it, he turned to his doctor. Dr. Conrad Murray. Handpicked. Paid $150,000 a month. But not by Michael. By AEG Live, the concert promoter. That night, Murray gave Michael a series of sedatives. Valium. Lorazepam. Midazolam. But none of them worked. Michael remained wide awake. By 10:40 in the morning, Murray made a decision that would change everything. He administered 25 milligrams of propofol. A hospital anesthetic. Not a sleep aid. Not even close. No heart monitor. No oxygen tank. No nurse on standby. And then, according to Murray's own testimony, he stepped out of the room. When he returned, Michael wasn't breathing. Instead of calling 911, he called Michael's bodyguard, security, staff. It would take nearly 20 minutes before someone dialed emergency services. By then it was too late. Michael Jackson was unresponsive. Paramedics worked for nearly an hour, but nothing brought him back. At 2:26 p.m., the king of pop was pronounced dead at UCLA Medical Center. The world stopped turning. But the questions had only begun. The investigation began almost immediately. The world demanded answers. So did the fans. So did the family. How could Michael Jackson, one of the most protected celebrities on Earth, die in his own home from a drug used in surgery? All eyes turned to one man, Dr. Conrad Murray, the physician who had been by Michael's side in his final months, the man who administered the fatal dose of propofol, and the man who didn't call 911 until it was far too late. In 2011, after 2 years of headlines, rumors, and endless speculation, Dr. Murray stood trial for involuntary manslaughter. The prosecution painted a clear picture. Murray had acted recklessly. He gave a dangerous drug in an unmonitored setting. And when things went wrong, he delayed calling for help out of fear for his own reputation. The jury agreed. Murray was found guilty. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He served just 2. But even with the verdict, the story didn't end. In fact, it only grew more complicated. Many believed that Murray wasn't the real villain, that he was just the final piece in a much larger, darker puzzle. Because Michael Jackson wasn't just a musician. He was a business, a billion-dollar brand. And in the years before his death, his finances were in trouble. Massive debt, lawsuits, mounting pressure to perform. The This Is It tour wasn't just a comeback. It was a lifeline. If the tour failed, Michael could lose everything. And AEG Live, the company funding the concerts, stood to lose millions. So they hired Murray, a doctor willing to do whatever it took to keep Michael going. But when Michael died, something strange happened. Instead of collapsing, his estate exploded in value. Sales of his music skyrocketed. New deals were signed. Merchandise, films, posthumous albums. In the first year alone, Michael Jackson's estate made over $275 million. And perhaps the most important asset of all? His share in the Sony/ATV music catalog, a massive collection of publishing rights, including songs by the Beatles, Elvis Presley, and Taylor Swift. That catalog was worth hundreds of millions. And Michael had fought for years to keep control of it. But after his death, control quietly shifted. Sony eventually bought back full ownership. Was that just good business? Or something more? Michael had long suspected he was being watched, manipulated, controlled. In one speech he said, "The history books are lies. The media is manipulation. They want to control what you see, what you think. And they don't care about the truth." He often spoke about powerful forces in the music industry. He called out record labels, accused executives of racism and exploitation. He believed there were people who didn't want him to succeed independently. So when he died, under mysterious circumstances, just weeks before massive financial comeback, some couldn't help but ask, was this really just about sleep? Or was Michael Jackson silenced before he could rise again? As the world searched for answers, those closest to Michael remembered something chilling. In the final weeks before his death, he didn't seem like himself. He was thinner, more withdrawn, sometimes paranoid, and sometimes heartbreakingly honest. He told people he didn't feel safe. He said there were people watching him, controlling him, waiting for him to break. One dancer from the This Is It tour recalled, "He would shake. He looked confused. He said things like, 'They're trying to kill me.'" And that wasn't the first time he had said it. In multiple interviews, Michael hinted at threats. He said people wanted his catalog, that he was being used, that the people around him didn't really care about his well-being. Even his children in later years would suggest that something wasn't right. His daughter Paris once said, "Everyone in the family knows. It was not just an overdose. And yet, no one has ever been held responsible beyond one man." Dr. Conrad Murray. Was Michael simply pushed too hard? Overmedicated? Or was there more to the story? There's another mystery, one that continues to haunt fans. The surveillance footage from Michael's house. The cameras in the hallway. The bedroom. The entrance. The final 24 hours of his life should have been fully documented. But somehow, the tapes were gone. Security said they had technical problems. Files were missing. No explanation was ever made public. How does that happen? In the home of one of the most famous people on the planet? It's questions like these that keep the conspiracy theories alive. And while many of them may be exaggerated or even false, they reflect a deeper truth. Michael Jackson died surrounded by mystery. And that mystery has never gone away. In the years since his passing, his legacy has only grown. New generations discover his music, his videos, his message. But at the same time, his life remains a cautionary tale. Of fame, of pressure, of control, of what happens when a person becomes bigger than the system that created them. Michael Jackson wanted to be more than a pop star. He wanted to be free. Free from contracts. Free from expectation. Free to create without fear. But in the end, he may have paid the price for that dream. So we are left with this. Was it an overdose? Or was it a message? Was he a victim of poor decisions? Or a target of powerful interests? Was it simply a tragedy? Or a carefully managed ending? We may never know the full truth. And maybe that's the point. Maybe some stories are meant to stay unfinished, unanswered, unresolved. But if we've learned anything from Michael Jackson, it's that truth always finds a way to rise. Just like a beat. Just like a song. Just like a legend. Thank you for watching. If this story made you feel something, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime and celebrity mysteries. We publish new deep dives every week. And now, we want to hear from you. What do you think happened to Michael Jackson? Was it really just a tragic accident? Or was it something more? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay awake. Because sometimes, the truth is hiding in plain sight. August 4th, 1962. A quiet Saturday evening in Brentwood, Los Angeles. Inside a modest Spanish-style home at 12305 Fifth Helena Drive, Marilyn Monroe was alone. She had spent the day talking on the phone, meeting her psychiatrist and taking long naps. To the outside world it seemed like any other day. But this would be her last. At 8 p.m. she spoke with Joe DiMaggio's son on the phone. At 8:30, she reportedly chatted with her friend Peter Lawford. He said she sounded off, tired, detached, almost drugged. By 10 p.m., she had vanished from contact. No more calls. No more signs of life. At 3:30 a.m., her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, noticed a light under Marilyn's door. She knocked. No answer. She called Marilyn's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who arrived minutes later. He broke the window. Inside the room, Marilyn Monroe was lying nude on the bed, face down, a phone in her hand. Empty pill bottles scattered around her. Silent. Still. She was only 36. The official story. The coroner's report called it probable suicide due to an overdose of barbiturates. No signs of foul play. No signs of struggle. But almost immediately, questions began to surface. Why didn't anyone call emergency services right away? Why was the body moved before police arrived? Why were certain documents missing? And perhaps most disturbing, why did so many people report completely different versions of that night? The conflicting timelines. Some witnesses said Marilyn died around midnight. Others insisted she was alive at 3 a.m. Still others claim her body was already cold before the doctor arrived. One LAPD officer said the scene looked staged. Clean. Too clean. Others said the position of her body didn't match that of a typical overdose. No vomit. No physical distress. And strangest of all, there were no pills found in her stomach. If she had swallowed dozens of barbiturates, they should have still been there. That raises a chilling possibility. Were the pills injected or forced into her another way? The missing evidence. There was no suicide note. No final words. No recorded goodbye. But there were journals, letters, phone records, all gone, vanished within hours of her death. Some say the FBI took them. Others point to the Kennedy family. And some believe it was the studio system itself, cleaning up a scandal that could have shaken the entire country. Marilyn Monroe was more than a movie star. She was a cultural icon, a symbol of beauty, fame, and desire. But behind the glamorous smile was a woman burdened with secrets. And some of those secrets may have involved the most powerful men in America. The Kennedy connection. Marilyn was romantically linked to President John F. Kennedy, and, according to several sources, also to his brother, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. The famous Happy Birthday, Mr. President performance at Madison Square Garden in May 1962 wasn't just flirtatious. It was a warning, a public whisper of a private affair. And it terrified the White House. According to FBI records, Marilyn had begun writing in a red diary, a place where she supposedly detailed her conversations with both Kennedys, about Cuba, about nuclear weapons, about things she should never have known. If that diary existed, it's never been found. But many believe its contents were enough to bring down an administration. And that's where the conspiracy deepens. Was she a threat? Some believe Marilyn was becoming unstable, not because of drugs, but because of what she knew. They say she was planning to go public, hold a press conference, expose her affairs with both JFK and RFK, and reveal political secrets whispered in pillow talk. That kind of exposure wasn't just scandalous. It was dangerous. Former CIA officer E. Howard Hunt, in later interviews, hinted that Monroe's death was cleaned up to protect national interests. Mob figures like Sam Giancana were also allegedly involved. Some claim Monroe had ties to both the mafia and political elite, making her a liability to everyone. And when you're a liability to both the government and organized crime, you don't last long. The last visitors. Several reports claim that Robert Kennedy was in Los Angeles the night Marilyn died, that he visited her, that they argued. Neighbors reported hearing shouting. A helicopter was spotted overhead late at night, unusual for that quiet neighborhood. One witness even said she saw men in suits leaving the property shortly before police arrived. But none of this was ever officially confirmed, and those who spoke up were quickly discredited or disappeared. Media blackout. What makes Monroe's case even more suspicious is how quickly the media stopped asking questions. Within days, headlines shifted from mystery to tragedy. The narrative became, "Depressed actress ends her life. Case closed." But behind the scenes, reporters whispered about missing files, changed timelines, inconsistent testimonies. No one wanted to push too hard. Because when the names involved are Kennedy, Hoover, and the mob, you tread carefully, very carefully. After her death, Marilyn Monroe became immortal. She wasn't just remembered. She was mythologized. The platinum hair, the red lips, the breathy voice. And now the tragic ending. Hollywood mourned her. But it also moved on. Studios pushed new stars. Papers recycled old gossip. And Marilyn's truth was quietly buried with her. A woman silenced. Marilyn spent her life being controlled. By studios, by men, by a system that sold her image but ignored her voice. She was branded a dumb blonde. But she was anything but dumb. She read philosophy, wrote poetry, challenged directors, fought for better roles. And she wasn't afraid to love powerfully, even recklessly. But when she got too close to the wrong truths, her light was extinguished. Was it suicide? Was it an accident? Or was it something darker? What we still don't know. There are so many unanswered questions. Why was the timeline of her death so inconsistent? Why were the pill bottles empty, yet her stomach showed no sign of ingestion? Why did the LAPD not question key figures more aggressively? And what happened to the alleged red diary? Even the autopsy was incomplete. Her internal organs, vital for toxicology, were destroyed or lost. How does that happen in the most high-profile death of the decade? Unless someone wanted it to happen. The woman behind the icon. We remember the legend, but rarely the person. Marilyn Monroe was born Norma Jean. She came from poverty. She faced abuse. She struggled with mental health her entire life. She wanted to be taken seriously. As an actress, as a woman, as a human being. But the world only saw the image, the smile, the sex symbol. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Why her death still haunts us. Marilyn's death was more than a tabloid story. It was a mirror, showing us how fame consumes, how power corrupts, and how truth gets buried. It reminded us that the higher you rise in public love, the more dangerous your fall can be in private silence. Because in the end, Marilyn wasn't just a victim of pills or secrets. She was a victim of the very system that built her up, then abandoned her. Final reflection. Over 60 years have passed, and we're still asking the same question. Who killed Marilyn Monroe? Maybe it was no one. Maybe it was everyone. Maybe it was the world itself. Too cruel, too demanding, too blind to the woman behind the icon. All we know is this. She deserved answers. She deserved peace. And maybe, just maybe, she deserves truth. Even now. What if your last known moment was caught on camera? Acting like you were being followed by something invisible? And what if that was the only clue? Before you were found dead in a place no one could explain? That's what happened to Elisa Lam. Her story has haunted the internet for over a decade. Not just because she died, but because no one can agree on how. Elisa Lam was a 21-year-old student from Vancouver, Canada. She loved books, fashion, and blogging about her thoughts. In January 2013, she decided to take a solo trip to California. A break from her studies. A search for inspiration and adventure. She visited San Diego first, then took a train to Los Angeles. There she checked into a hotel downtown. That hotel was the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil wasn't exactly a five-star destination. It had a dark reputation. Over the years, it had been home to suicides, overdoses, and even serial killers. But Elisa didn't know that. She booked a shared room to save money. After a few nights, her roommates complained about her odd behavior. So the hotel moved her to a private room. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. On February 1, 2013, Elisa was reported missing. Police searched the hotel. They found nothing. But then they looked at the elevator footage. And what they found shocked the world. The video, taken on January 31st, shows Elisa inside an elevator. She steps in, presses multiple buttons, then waits. But something's wrong. She peeks out into the hallway. Like she's scared. She quickly hides in the corner. Then jumps out, makes strange hand gestures. Like she's talking to someone who isn't there. Then she vanishes. The footage went viral. Millions watched and rewatched it. Some said she was having a mental breakdown. Others believed she was possessed. Some were sure someone else was there, but edited out of the footage. But the biggest question remained. Where was Elisa Lam? For 19 days, there were no answers. Then hotel guests began complaining. Their tap water tasted strange. It was discolored. Had a weird smell. Maintenance workers checked the water tanks on the roof. Inside one of the tanks, they found Elisa's body. She was naked. Her clothes were floating nearby. The hatch was closed, and no one could explain how she got there. When investigators arrived on the rooftop, they found the access door locked and alarmed. There was no sign of forced entry. To get to the water tanks, you'd have to pass through a secured area, climb a ladder, and lift a heavy metal lid. And somehow Elisa, who weighed just over 100 pounds, was found inside the tank with the lid closed shut again. Police were puzzled. Her phone was never recovered. There were no drugs or alcohol in her system. There were no signs of physical trauma. No suicide note. No clear cause of death. The autopsy ruled her death as accidental drowning, but almost no one believed it. Here's where things get darker. The Cecil Hotel isn't just any building. It has a past soaked in blood and mystery. In the 1980s, serial killer Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, lived on the 14th floor while committing his murders. Another killer, Jack Unterweger, also stayed there, while targeting sex workers. Guests have jumped to their deaths from the upper floors. Some say the hotel is cursed. Elisa's death only added to that legend. And then, people started noticing strange connections. Theory 1: murder. Some believe Elisa met someone in the hotel. Maybe a guest. Maybe an employee. They point to her behavior in the elevator, as if she was hiding. They say the elevator footage is clearly edited. There are gaps. The timestamp freezes. And 1 minute of footage appears missing. Did someone follow her to the roof? Force her into the tank? Cover their tracks? There was no surveillance camera near the tank. No witnesses. Theory 2: mental illness. Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She was on medication for prescriptions at the time. The coroner said she may have experienced a manic episode. That could explain the strange behavior in the elevator. Maybe she climbed to the roof herself, undressed due to confusion or hallucination, and fell into the tank. But even this raises a question. How did she lift the lid and then close it again from the inside? No one can explain that. Theory 3: the paranormal. Some say the elevator video looks like something out of a horror movie. People online noticed Elisa press buttons in a way that resembled an old Korean ghost ritual. The timing, the gestures, the idea that she was being chased by something invisible. Others believe the hotel is haunted. They say Elisa was cursed the moment she stepped inside. Of course, there's no proof, but it's a theory that won't go away. In the end, no theory has solved the mystery completely. The official story says it was an accident, a tragic case of untreated mental illness. But the internet doesn't agree. There are too many loose ends, too many strange coincidences, like the Lamb Elisa tuberculosis test, which shares her name. It was being studied in Los Angeles just days after her death. Or the hotel's reputation as a magnet for darkness. Elisa Lam's story isn't just about one girl who died too young. It's about how one life, captured in a few minutes of elevator footage, can echo across the world. It's about the way truth can hide in plain sight and still remain out of reach. It's about how a hotel can hold secrets and how the internet can keep a mystery alive forever. So now it's your turn. What do you think happened to Elisa Lam? Was it a tragic accident, a murder covered up, or something beyond explanation? Let us know what you believe, because this story isn't over yet. May 3, 2007. Praia da Luz, Portugal. A peaceful seaside village where families come to relax, unwind, and feel safe. But that night, safety vanished with one little girl. 3-year-old Madeline McCann was sleeping in her family's holiday apartment. Just a few yards away, her parents were dining at a nearby restaurant with friends. They checked on her every 20 to 30 minutes. Everything seemed fine. Until it wasn't. At around 10 p.m., her mother, Kate McCann, walked into the room and found Madeline's bed empty. No sign of forced entry. No broken windows. Just silence. And a wide-open window. The world would never be the same again. What followed was one of the most intense, expensive, and controversial investigations in modern history. 16 years later, we still don't have answers. But we have theories. We have inconsistencies. And we have a haunting question that echoes through time. Where is Madeline McCann? The McCann family was staying at the Ocean Club Resort in apartment 5A. It was their 6th night in Portugal. That evening, the parents left their 3 children, Madeline and her younger twin siblings, asleep in the apartment. They went to dine at the Tapas bar just 160 feet away. Close enough to feel safe. Far enough that they couldn't hear a scream. They took turns checking on the kids. At 9:05 p.m., Kate checked, everything was fine. At 9:30, another friend in the group peeked and still fine. But at 10 p.m., when Kate returned, Madeline was gone. The bedroom window was open. The shutters raised. Panic set in. Staff and guests searched frantically. The local police were called. But precious hours passed, and no trace of Madeline was found. Within 24 hours, the story exploded across the globe. A beautiful, blonde little girl had vanished without a sound. And everyone wanted to know, how? The initial investigation was led by the Portuguese police known as the PJ. But right from the start, there were critical mistakes. The apartment wasn't sealed off properly. Dozens of people entered the scene, contaminating possible evidence. No fingerprints were taken from the window. No neighborhood-wide roadblocks. No border alerts until it was too late. And then something unusual happened. Just days after the disappearance, British media and authorities arrived in full force. The case went global. Photos of Madeline were everywhere. A website launched. Millions in donations poured in. But with that spotlight came pressure and suspicion. The Portuguese police began to question the parents. Why did they leave the children alone? Why wasn't there a babysitter? And most troubling, why were there inconsistencies in their statements? By September, 4 months after the disappearance, the police declared Kate and Jerry McKenna-Arguido's formal suspects. But there was no physical evidence. No body. No confession. No trial. In July 2008, the case was officially closed by Portuguese authorities. But it was far from over. With no clear answers, the theories began to spread. Theory 1, stranger abduction. The McCanns believed from the start that Madeline had been kidnapped, perhaps taken by a pedophile ring, or sold into trafficking. There had been reports of strange men lurking near the resort in the days before she vanished. Even a man seen carrying a child in pajamas late that night. Was Madeline targeted? Theory 2, an accident covered up. Some investigators believed Madeline may have died accidentally in the apartment, and that the parents, afraid of losing their other children or being charged with neglect, staged a kidnapping. This theory was fueled by the discovery of cadaver dog alerts in the apartment. Dogs detected the scent of human remains in the rental car used by the McCanns. But months after the disappearance, no DNA, no body, just more questions. Theory 3, organized abduction by insiders. Could hotel staff have tipped off someone about a vulnerable child? Did someone know the parents' nightly schedule? The routine of leaving the children unattended? None of these theories have ever been proven. And yet, all continue to circulate. Meanwhile, the media frenzy never stopped. Some portrayed the McCanns as grieving parents. Others painted them as suspects hiding behind privilege. Tabloids published wild accusations. And eventually, the McCanns sued multiple publications and won. But the damage was done. Public trust had fractured. And the truth seemed further away than ever. In 2011, the British government launched Operation Grange, a full-scale review by London's Metropolitan Police. They re-examined over 40,000 pieces of information, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, and narrowed down dozens of persons of interest. By 2013, new EFITs were released. Descriptions of men seen near the resort. One in particular, seen carrying a child that night, became the center of focus. Then, in 2020, a shocking announcement. German police named a new suspect, Christian Bruckner, a convicted sex offender with a long criminal history. He had lived near Praia de Luz in 2007. His phone had been near the resort that night. He had access to a camper van. And a disturbing past. German authorities declared they were certain Madeline was dead, and that Bruckner was responsible. But to this day, no charges have been filed. No body has been found. And Christian Bruckner denies any involvement. As of now, the investigation remains open. 16 years have passed. Madeline would be 20 this year. Her face once on every magazine, every lamppost, every airport screen. has become a symbol of parental fear, of justice delayed, of a system overwhelmed by pressure, money, and politics. Her parents still hold out hope. They've never stopped searching, never stopped believing. And for the rest of the world, the question lingers like a shadow. What happened to Madeleine McCann? Was it a calculated crime? A tragic mistake? Or something we'll never truly understand? Until real answers come, we are left only with a mystery, one that still haunts the world. It was a cold February day in 1957, Philadelphia. On a quiet road near Fox Chase, a young man walking through the woods spotted something strange. A large cardboard box discarded in the brush. He almost walked past it, but curiosity made him stop. Inside, to his horror, he found the body of a child. A little boy. Naked, bruised, wrapped in a cheap plaid blanket. The boy looked no older than 6. His hair had been crudely cut, almost as if someone had shaved his head in a hurry. There were fresh bruises all over his body, but no one knew who he was. No missing person report matched. No frantic parents came forward. Just silence. Police were baffled. They printed flyers. They took the boy's fingerprints. They checked every hospital and orphanage. Nothing. No name. No leads. They began calling him America's unknown child. The medical examiner determined the boy was between 4 and 6 years old, malnourished, likely abused. He had been dead for several days before being found. There were signs he had been bathed after death, and oddly his hands and feet were wrinkled, like he'd been submerged in water. Was someone trying to hide evidence? Why clean him so carefully, only to dump him in the woods? The box he was found in had once held a bassinet, shipped from a JCPenney in Upper Darby. But that lead went nowhere. Thousands of tips poured in. Police followed each one. Psychics, amateur sleuths, people convinced the boy was their neighbor's missing child. But again, nothing stuck. The trail went cold, and America moved on. But not everyone forgot. Some investigators retired, gray-haired, long past duty. Couldn't let go. They kept files in their basements, talked to reporters for decades, and believed with every fiber that this child deserved justice. Over the years, theories began to surface. One woman, known only as M, came forward in the 1980s with a disturbing story. She claimed the boy was purchased by her mother, kept in a basement, abused, and finally killed in a fit of rage. She said her mother panicked, bathed the boy, cut his hair, and dumped the body. But investigators couldn't verify the details. M had a history of mental illness, and her story changed too many times. The lead was dropped. Then came the foster home theory. Just a mile and a half from where the boy was found sat a foster home run by a man named Arthur Nicoletti. People started whispering, could the boy have come from there? After all, the blanket he was wrapped in was similar to those used in the home. The bassinet box had been delivered nearby, and rumors swirled of abuse within the walls of that house. But again, no proof, no confession, nothing concrete. And so the boy remained a mystery. In 1998, the case was reopened, this time with new tools. DNA testing. The boy's remains were exhumed. A DNA profile was built. Still no matches. But for the first time in decades, hope returned. Then in 2016, a group of volunteers launched a new initiative. They called themselves the Vidic Society, a collection of retired detectives and forensic experts dedicated to solving cold cases. Using genealogy databases, they started piecing together possible relatives, centuries-old family trees, DNA matches from distant cousins, a breadcrumb trail through time. And in 2022, they got a hit. His name was Joseph Augustus Sorelli, born January 13, 1953, just 4 years old when he died. Finally, after 65 years, the boy in the box had a name: Joseph. He was born in West Philadelphia. His mother was identified through DNA. His father's identity was confirmed soon after. But still, the question that haunted everyone remained: what happened to Joseph? Why did no one report him missing? Why did no one come forward all these years? Investigators have not released the full details, but they confirmed that his birth certificate was real. He had siblings, and that some family members are still alive today. The case is now classified as a homicide investigation, but the truth? It may never come out fully. So many years have passed. Witnesses gone. Memories faded. What we do know is this. Joseph was a little boy. He lived. He laughed. He mattered. And for decades, strangers carried his story forward when no one else would. They put flowers on his grave, held candlelight vigils, spoke his name even when they didn't know it, because deep down people understood that every child deserves to be remembered. This story isn't just about a murder. It's about silence, about a world that let a boy disappear without a whisper. But it's also about persistence, about the detectives, journalists, and citizens who refused to give up. It's about science catching up to justice, and how technology gave a name to the nameless. Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He was no longer the boy in the box. He was a child with a birthday, with a family, with a story. And finally, after all these years, his voice was heard. If this case has taught us anything, it's that justice may be slow, but it never stops searching. February 1959. In the heart of Russia's frozen Ural Mountains, 9 young hikers vanish. Experienced, well-equipped. But something went terribly wrong. When a search team finally found their tent, it had been slashed open. From the inside, their bodies? Scattered across the snow. Some nearly naked. Some with fractured skulls and broken ribs. One woman's tongue was missing. Another had empty eye sockets. More than 60 years later, we still don't know what really happened. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass incident. A mystery so strange, it sounds like science fiction. But every detail you're about to hear is real. So what could have caused 9 healthy hikers to flee into a blizzard? In the dead of night. Without shoes, without coats. And never return? Let's start from the beginning. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women, mostly students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Sverdlovsk, now called Ekaterinburg. They were led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, a skilled hiker and engineering student. The group included Zina Kolmogorova, athletic and strong-willed; Ludmila Dubinina, tough and politically outspoken; Rustam Slobodin, a distance runner; Yuri Krivonischenko, a reactor technician; Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, a radio engineering student; Alexander Kolevatov, a physics major; and Semyon Zolotaryov, the oldest, a 38-year-old World War II veteran. Their goal? A 200-mile skiing expedition through the Ural Mountains. It would take them through extremely cold and difficult terrain. But they were all certified as Grade 2 hikers, aiming for Grade 3, the highest possible. They left on January 27, 1959. The weather was already harsh. Snowstorms, heavy winds, and freezing temperatures below -20 degrees Celsius. 2 days into the journey, one of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, fell ill and returned to town. That decision would save his life. The rest of the group pushed forward. By February 1st, they reached the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, a mountain whose name in the indigenous Mansi language means Dead Mountain. There they made a fateful decision. Instead of continuing to the forested area for shelter, they set up camp on the open slope. Why? Maybe they were lost. Maybe they didn't want to lose progress. Or maybe they simply trusted each other and Igor's leadership. That night would be their last. Back home, families grew worried. When no telegrams arrived by the expected date, a search party was launched. On February 26, nearly 4 weeks after the last known communication, rescuers found the hiker's tent. It was half collapsed and partially covered in snow. The most disturbing part? The tent had been sliced open from the inside. Inside, they found neatly folded clothes, boots, journals, but no people. Footprints, barefoot, some in socks, some with one shoe, led into the woods nearby. The first two bodies were found under a cedar tree, nearly a mile from the tent. Yuri Krivonischenko and Georgy Doroshenko. They were barefoot, stripped to their underwear, hands burnt, and skin discolored from the cold. Nearby, the remains of a small fire. 3 more bodies were found between the tent and the tree. Igor Dyatlov, Zina Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin. As if they had been trying to return to camp. All had died of hypothermia. But the last 4. They weren't found until 2 months later. They were discovered in a ravine buried under 13 feet of snow. These bodies showed severe trauma. Ludmila Dubinina had broken ribs, a missing tongue, and empty eye sockets. Nikolai's skull was fractured. Semyon had chest injuries like those seen in car crashes. Yet, no external wounds. It was as if something crushed them from the inside. With no clear answers, the Soviet authorities launched an official investigation. The cause of death was listed as a compelling natural force. But what force could cause such chaos? Theories flooded in. First, the avalanche theory. It sounds simple. The hikers heard a rumble. Panicked. Slashed open the tent to escape. And were buried or injured as snow came crashing down. But there's a problem. No signs of an avalanche were found at the site. The slope was too shallow. The tent and ski poles remained standing. If it had been an avalanche, everything would have been swept away. Second theory, infrasound. Some scientists believe strong winds hitting the mountain caused a rare type of sound wave called a Kármán vortex street. This infrasound is below the range of human hearing, but can cause nausea, panic, and irrational fear. Could it explain why trained hikers fled into a snowstorm without shoes? Maybe, but that still doesn't explain the injuries. Another theory, secret military testing. In the 1950s, the Soviet Union was experimenting with weapons in remote regions. Some believe parachute mines were tested nearby. And the blast injuries match what was found on the hikers. Internal damage. No external wounds. Plus, strange orange spheres were reported in the sky around the time of their deaths. Even radioactive traces were found on some of the hikers' clothing. But there's no official record of military activity in that area. At least, not one we've ever seen. Then came the more far-fetched ideas. Aliens. Yeti attacks. Government assassinations. Even mind control experiments. All fueled by missing documents. Inconsistent autopsies. And the Soviet Union's notorious secrecy. Over the decades, investigators, scientists, and amateur sleuths have pored over the evidence. In 2020, Russian officials reopened the case and again concluded it was an avalanche. But the report was vague, and the families of the victims rejected it. Some say it was simply a tragic accident. Others call it a cover-up. And some believe we'll never know the full truth. But here's what we do know. 9 young people entered those mountains with excitement and ambition. They trusted each other. They believed in something bigger. And whatever happened that night, whatever terrified them enough to flee a warm tent into lethal cold, it ended 9 lives. And left behind a silence that echoes through history. The Dyatlov Pass incident is more than a mystery. It's a story of unanswered questions, lost potential, and the chilling reminder that nature, and perhaps something else, can still keep its secrets. And so the wind still howls over Dead Mountain, and every February the snow still falls. But somewhere beneath it, the truth is waiting. April 5, 1994. Seattle, Washington. A greenhouse above the garage. The body of Kurt Cobain, the voice of a generation, is found. He's holding a shotgun. A suicide note lies beside him. The world is told he took his own life. But something doesn't sit right. Too many questions. Too many strange details. And a note that, according to experts, reads like a retirement letter. Until the very last lines. Tonight, we go beyond the headlines. Past the police reports. Into the shadows of fame, addiction, and power. This isn't just a story about death. It's a story about what we choose to believe and what we're told to forget. Kurt Cobain wasn't just a rock star. He was the rock star, the reluctant voice of the 90s, a grunge icon who never wanted the crown. From Smells Like Teen Spirit to unplugged MTV sessions that made grown men cry, Kurt was raw, honest, unfiltered, and maybe too dangerous. Because behind the flannel shirts and the messy blonde hair, there was a man trying to break free. From drugs, from fame, from a marriage that some say was falling apart, and from an industry that had made billions off his pain. So what really happened in those final 48 hours? Was Kurt Cobain simply a tortured artist who gave up? Or was he silenced? Let's begin with what we know. In the weeks leading up to his death, Kurt was spiraling. Or at least that's what the public was told. He had overdosed in Rome on March 4th. But his wife, Courtney Love, initially said it was an accident. Later, she changed the story, calling it a suicide attempt. Conflicting details. Confusing timelines. After returning to Seattle, Kurt entered rehab in Los Angeles. But just days later he left. Vanished. Without a word. For the next few days, no one knew where he was. Not his bandmates. Not his family. Not even Courtney. But there were sightings. A cab driver. A friend. A note left behind, telling the rehab facility he was going back home. Meanwhile, Courtney hired a private investigator. Tom Grant. A former LAPD detective. Grant didn't believe the official story. Not then. Not now. He claimed Courtney was evasive, contradictory, manipulative, and he had a chilling suspicion. Kurt hadn't taken his own life. He'd been helped, or worse, set up. Grant recorded phone calls, took notes, watched Courtney's behavior. He says the pieces didn't add up. Kurt was planning to leave her. He had called his lawyer, asking to remove her from his will. He also wanted to quit Nirvana, to live quietly, to raise his daughter, Frances Bean, to write acoustic music. Not exactly the actions of someone ready to end it all. So where was he in those missing days? April 5, 1994. A quiet day in Seattle. But inside the greenhouse above Kurt Cobain's garage, something tragic had already happened. 3 days later, on April 8th, an electrician arrived to install security lighting. He looked through the window and saw a body. It was Kurt, lying on the floor, a shotgun across his chest, a suicide note planted in a flower pot nearby, a high dose of heroin in his system, and a gunshot wound to the head. But here's where things get strange. The heroin level in Kurt's body? Sky high. 3 times the lethal dose for a regular user. Some experts say it would have rendered him instantly unconscious. So how could he have picked up a shotgun and pulled the trigger? And the shotgun? No fingerprints. Not on the barrel. Not on the trigger. Not on the shells. The suicide note mostly reads like a retirement letter, talking about his love for music, his fans, and his daughter. Only the last few lines talk about suicide. Different handwriting, different tone. Experts have questioned whether those lines were forged. And Courtney? She was oddly calm. Burned Kurt's belongings. Canceled his credit card before his body was even found. And blocked the release of photos from the crime scene. All of it fueled speculation. Was this really suicide? Or a perfectly staged exit? As the media pushed the suicide narrative, a few voices spoke out. One of them, Tom Grant, a private investigator hired by Courtney Love herself. Just days before Kurt was found dead. Tom's job? To find Kurt, who had gone missing. But what he uncovered disturbed him. He believed this wasn't a suicide. It was a cover-up. He recorded his calls with Courtney. She changed her story multiple times. She lied about Kurt's drug use, his location, even the content of the suicide note. Tom visited the house. Noticed the greenhouse door was unlocked. No alarm triggered. No signs of forced entry. He raised his concerns to the police. But no one listened. Then came El Duce, a musician from the band The Mentors. In a shocking interview, he claimed someone had offered him $50,000 to kill Kurt Cobain. He even named the person Courtney Love. A week later, El Duce was dead, hit by a train in mysterious circumstances. His death ruled accidental. More silence. Even Kurt's closest friends questioned the official version. They said he wasn't suicidal. Yes, he was struggling. But he had plans. He had love for his daughter. He was about to start a new chapter. So if he didn't kill himself, who did? And why? Years have passed, but the questions haven't faded. If Kurt Cobain's death was truly suicide, why were so many details left unexplored? Why wasn't a full forensic investigation conducted? Why weren't fingerprints found on the shotgun? Not even Kurt's? Why was the suicide note addressed mostly to his fans, and not to his wife or daughter? And most chilling of all, was that note even meant to be a suicide letter? Or simply a farewell to fame? A goodbye to Nirvana? Some handwriting experts have suggested that the last few lines, the ones that mention death, may not have been written by Kurt at all. Too many coincidences. Too many loose ends. Courtney Love has denied any involvement. She says she loved Kurt, that his demons were too powerful, that he was tired. But others don't buy it. Documentaries like Soaked in Bleach reignited public interest, showing Tom Grant's recordings and timeline in vivid detail. It raised a generation of skeptics. Online forums, independent investigators, journalists, musicians, they've all asked the same thing. If Kurt wanted to die, why was he making plans? Why had he checked into rehab? Why was he talking about a solo album? Why was he preparing to gain custody of his daughter? And if he didn't want to die, then someone else wanted him gone. Whether we'll ever know the full truth remains uncertain. Files are sealed. Evidence has disappeared. Witnesses are dead. But what we do know is this. Kurt Cobain was more than just a rock star. He was a voice, a movement, a mirror to a generation's pain. And his death, just like his life, refuses to be forgotten. So was it suicide or a silenced soul? You decide.